Alright, so we're going to start Lecture 2 notes. As you begin to use your rating scale videos, when you start watching your video and workbook, we'll discuss some of the common factors within all of the different rating scales. Some of the information in these notes has been taken from the All About book for the Eckers, which is very similar to the All About book for the Itters, and currently they do not have the All About book for the family child care or the school age. I know last time I talked to him, probably about a year and a half ago now, they were talking about finishing up the All About family child care, but as far as I know, they have not finished that. So all the information below relates to the rating scales, no matter which one you're completing, which one you're working on. It all has to, it all has it all has to do with all of the different scales. So let's continue on. Some introduction information. So it's important to remember that there is a lot of flexibility in how the requirements can be met by using the rating scales. So things can be done differently in different classrooms, yet the same requirements can be met. So, for instance, the way that the teacher has the children go into the bathroom to do the hand washing. As long as the hand washing is done in the appropriate way, it can all be, if you have one child going in at a time or 5 children going in at a time and it's supervised and so forth, it can all, so there's variation within different classrooms and so forth, but the requirement is still met. Okay, the majority of the items in the rating subscales allow the observer to examine the quality of what children actually experience in a program. So these items are, so they have items 1 through 32 in the Itters, and items 1 through 37 on the Eckers, 1 through 34 on the family child care, and then 1 through 40 on the SACers, the school age care. So these are the items that are considered the most directly related to how children develop while they're in our care. The ones that the sections that go beyond that, and all of them end somewhere there in the 40s, but the sections that go beyond that have to deal with the parents in the program. Okay, so these ones here are of our utmost concern, but yet again the parents is still another priority in program. All right, in research, a relationship has been shown between higher scores on the scale and better child development outcomes in a wide range of areas. So the outcomes include those that are usually thought to be important for later success in school and in our society, so namely cognitive development, language, and social emotional skills. So, and as we know, all of those things are things that we deal with in programs all the time. So the higher quality of program, the research shows it that, hey, if we've got these things in a program, it shows that the outcomes for the children, that children have higher outcomes leaving our programs. The last items in the rating scale subscale look at the program quality for the adults involved in the program, so the parents and staff. This is what I was talking about. Oh, I'm sorry, the Itters only goes up to item 39. So 33 through 39 for the Itters, the 38 through 43 for the Eckers, 35 through 38 for the family child care, the FACers, and then 41 through 49 for the SACers. So these items support the items directly related to the children. So when we're talking about the children, we're talking about the children, and then we're talking about the program. So these ones are more related to the program, but again, still directly related to the children. These items deal with providing a comfortable and convenient work environment for staff, as well as professional development opportunities to encourage staff competence and so forth. So a whole variety of ranges of things. So, and those are just as important as any other component, because if we don't have a good foundation for a program, we're never going to have the high quality classroom program either. Communication with parents is a must to help balance the child's life in 2 settings, so in the home and also in their early childhood program. So communication with the parents, if we don't have that communication, if we haven't built up that trust like we were talking about on the last lecture notes, we're not going to have a quality program. So it takes time to develop this communication with parents, whether it be through, like I said before, through classroom weekly letters, email bursts. You could have a blog, you could have a website for your classroom, a whole wide variety, but also that day-to-day communication with parents is really important too. Calling the parents on the phone if necessary. So it helps balance. We need that balance between the two, because we don't want to be doing something totally different than what the parents are doing, and the parents doing something totally different than what we're doing. Otherwise, the child gets really confused. Understanding the meaning of the rating scales, many things will affect the care and education that teachers provide for the children in early childhood programs. So, for instance, excuse me, I had a yawn. Okay, so many things will affect the care and education that teachers provide for their children in early childhood programs. So cultural preferences and beliefs, that's both on the staff, the teachers, as well as the children. So we need to make sure that we balance those and that we are understanding on both sides. Curriculum approach used at the center and in the classroom. So for instance, there's some classrooms that follow a high scope approach. That would be different than a Montessori approach, or that would be different than a Reggio approach. If you're not familiar with those different types of curriculum approaches, that's okay. Any of those approaches should still have this high quality built into it. Now some programs are going to maybe be lacking, like for instance, if it's a strict Montessori program, there's probably not a lot of dramatic play in the classroom. So that's one area that you might see as a lower score in the rating scale for a Montessori, but it doesn't mean to say that it's a horrible program overall. It's just to say there's some things that we have strengths and weaknesses in. All right, the physical conditions of the building, so hopefully the building's not falling down, but that also means things like nails sticking out of a shelf, or chairs that are broken, or pinching and so forth. So the physical condition, the center finances, so and over the last few years, definitely centers have probably had to deal more with the finances, especially in the state-funded programs, getting cut, finding larger and larger cuts into programs, and not being able to serve as many children and so forth, and then also affecting our staffing. And then that goes into the staffing issues, or people having to take pay cuts and things along the lines of that in order to maintain jobs or to keep jobs. Since these areas vary greatly among centers, and when I use the word center, I'm including all types of programs, so including family, child care, school-age care throughout the course. So a center means an area, a place where children are being cared for, okay, in this class. You will see a wide variety of scores on the rating scale. And that's something to be expected. All right, we're going to continue on here. You will find every program has strengths and weaknesses, like we just talked about. It's unlikely that a program will do well, like 6 and 7s, and all of the requirements of the scale. Remember that score of 7 are very difficult to achieve. It's not impossible, but it's extremely difficult. So if I see a student coming in with 7s across the board, I have big questions, like really? Because in all of the times that for instance, Debbie Cryer and Thelma Harms, Kathy Riley, and so forth have gone out to observe, they've never found a center with perfect 7s or a classroom with perfect 7s. So, not to say that we can't try to achieve that, but it's extremely difficult to get a score of an overall 7, except if not close to impossible. So the higher the 6s, the better. Programs right now also, if we see an overall average, meaning like if we take all of the items and we average them out, if we see an average of 5, that's really what the state of California is looking for in their state-funded programs. So at least a minimum of a overall score of 5. So some areas you might have a 1 or 2 in, other areas you might have a 7 in, and hopefully you have more 6s and 7s. But if you do get those areas of 1, 2, or 3, that's where you get that overall score of at least a 5. The rating scale should be used to determine the program's strengths and weaknesses. So consider where change is needed and to determine how to create desired improvement within a program. So don't plan on changing everything overnight. You can't. And when you go into this, make sure that you go into it. For instance, if you're observing your own classroom, the ideal situation is for you not to change anything, even after you've been reading the textbook and so forth a couple of times. Do not change anything about your classroom until after you do the rating scale. Then you'll be able to see, okay, how can I make improvements, which areas am I going to improve upon, then go back and do another rating in a month or two and see, okay, which areas have I improved in, and then which areas do I still need to work on. It is important to remember when considering the rating scale scores that the individual requirements of the scale are far less important than the overall average or the average total score for any classroom. So it's the average total score that is related to positive child development, not any single requirement by themselves. And so what this means is, for instance, our center here at San Marcos, some of the classrooms have a really difficult time scoring higher than a 1 on the meals and the hand washing because of the hand washing, and we don't have warm water. And if you don't have warm water, there are 3 areas that you can't score higher than a 1 on 2 areas and a 3 on another, and we'll get to that coming up here in the other lecture notes. But so we know that we're never going to score higher than a 1 for some of the classrooms because we don't have warm water. So, we'll never score a perfect 7. Now, of course, we're, hoping that at some point in time that'll change, but until it does, that's where we're at. So even if one item is scored low, does not mean that a center or classroom is not a quality program. You need to keep in mind that overall average score. So, I feel fortunate that our classrooms, we try to always be Eckers and Itters at all of our sites here at Palomar College, meaning either San Marcos or Escondido. And of course, there could be a day when we do, drop below the average of 6, but our goal is to be at least a 6 or higher. That's our own, personal center goal, is to be at least in the 6 range somewhere. If there are several low scoring items, of course, it will bring down the overall average score. So this would be an area of concern for the program, and this is where you'd want to start making some changes. So, in order to put in warm water, it's going to cost thousands of dollars. That's not feasible to do that. But in other areas, we've definitely improved upon things. So we have improved our scores over the years because we have had a higher overall average score, not just based on that couple of scores that are related to the hand washing. The rating scale is designed to assist program staff to make well-informed choices as to which areas the staff might want to look at for improvement first. Sometimes if there are several low-scoring areas which might have less expense involved, staff might want to improve these areas first so the overall average is improved. And so, for instance, I know when we really got trained on the rating scale several years ago, and we started using the rating scale in the appropriate way, like what you're going to be learning here in this class, and we could see that we didn't have enough soft items in some of the classrooms. And so one of the teachers started to buy up small stuffed animals, the Beanie Babies, etc. at garage sales, wash them all, of course, and add them to the classroom. And so when you're talking about numbers of items per children, having a basket of those, that's not a lot of space that it takes up, but it meets the requirement. So that's something that's less expensive. We can definitely buy Beanie Babies, but we can't, change the plumbing of the building. Sometimes there might be 1 or 2 areas where great cost would be involved in order to improve. And so, again, that's what I was just talking about. You want to make those less expensive changes first to improve the overall quality, and then work on some of those ones with greater costs. And later on, where we'll talk about fundraising and things like that. A priority should be made starting off with the easiest and cheapest areas to fix first. Remember, change can't happen in just one day, so take it one item at a time. Improvement is a step toward a higher quality. So just by purchasing those Beanie Babies, we were able to go from, I forget exactly if it was a 4, maybe a 3 or 4, something like that, up to a 6 or 7. Okay, so in that classroom, so that made a huge difference. It made a great impact. So that's what we want to do. Change it, over time. All right, the All About books, they're not required, but they are great resources especially for a program to purchase. So if your program is required to do the rating scale, you should have, depending on the age ranges that you're working with, but the All About Eckers or the All About Itters is definitely a must. The books can be used as a reference where the information can be looked up on an as-needed basis. So definitely a well worth investment to a program. If your center does not require you to have the Eckers or the Itters, then it's your choice whether or not you want to purchase them for this class. They're recommended, but they're not required. Even though these books are mainly the focus for Eckers and Itters, they can still assist other programs in other areas. So again, like I stated before, hopefully there will be rating scale books for the other ones, all about books. And the Palomar College Library has both of these books on reserve for your use. Since you will only need these as a reference, you can check them out for a couple hours and get all your questions answered. You look at them through as a reference and looking, okay, I need help with item number 5, and I need to look through item 5, 3.1, for instance. I'm just giving a example, and you look at that section and say, okay, now I know how to score. So, and I of course have the books as well. So if on the discussion board you post something, you post a question on that, usually on the general discussion board, but it can be in some of the topical ones too. But generally on that general discussion board, I can answer it for you. Okay. So anyway, so that's what the all about books are there for. And again, I included the resource information or the citing information, so reference. All right, so I think that's it. Thanks. Bye.